Hey, it's Doug from Rise Above Performance Training. And are you hurting your back when you're doing kettlebell swings? Or do you want to do kettlebell swings but think they'll hurt your back? In this video, I'm going to go over some ways to help prevent that. Let's check it out. The first thing we're going to think about, and I'm going to assume, is that your back injury, let's say you're doing your kettlebell swings and you have a little bit of back pain, that you don't have anything major. No disc issues, no sciatica, nothing major that can be exacerbated if you add something dynamic like the kettlebell swings. So that's the first thing. If you do have something like that, obviously consult the doctor or physician before you proceed doing something like the kettlebell swing. Next is we want to have some prerequisites. Now, prerequisites are things that you need to be able to have a successful kettlebell swing, including mobility drills. You should probably do mobility drills daily and before you work out. If you don't know what those are basically just getting the joints and muscles loose. I recommend doing hip, leg, low back things. If you need some mobility drills, obviously you can search YouTube. You can search my channel. I have a bunch of videos on mobility drills. I'll even post one in the card above. Next, we want to make sure that we have the prerequisites on strength. The swing is a hinge. And what a hinge is we're not dropping down like a squat. We're hinging back as if someone is pushing right into my hips and I'm pushing back. If you notice, I do sit into it, but my hips do not drop downward a lot. They go back down ever so slightly, but they go back more than down. So I'm pushing through, and then I'll end up driving up. So it's more like hiking a football than it is jumping vertically straight up. You can also think about jumping horizontally. So if I were to jump for distance, I'm going to have my hips up a little higher to jump for distance versus jumping up where I'll kind of go more or less straight up and down. Lastly, we want to make sure that we have the strength prerequisites. Doing a lot of deadlifts. So the deadlift, you can make it like a controlled swing. So a deadlift, I can practice my hinge where I'm going to have my hips up, locked down, drive my feet through the floor, and then when I go back, I'm going to push my hips back like a hinge, drop down, driving up. A lot of deadlifts are great to build up the prerequisites and the strength needed for the swing. One more thing, core strength. So core is going to be the stabilizing muscles of the swing. Now, if you tend to fatigue out, which a lot of people do, they'll start off great with their swing and then fatigue, and then their technique will shift. A lot of times it's due to the core strength kind of giving out. So things like planks, band exercises, sit-ups even, will help build up that core strength and the core endurance to be able to do the swings properly. So add a lot of core to your workout. Again, if you need core exercises, I have a ton of those on my channel. You can look them up on YouTube. I'll put another card right here for that. Next, I'm going to show how to do a kettlebell swing. Now, I like to teach the hard style swing, especially for beginners, because it's going to be a little bit more kind of effort filled. Which I mean by that is we're really going to focus on our hip drive and power production, and that leads to a little more safety and kind of what we need to focus on to get a proper swing. There is more of a competition style, which is a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more kind of full body inducing, and it's designed to go long for endurance. So let's think about it like this. If I were to run the length of a football field, I have to add a little bit more power, a little bit more speed usually if I'm going to try to get down there quickly because the distance is so short. If I'm going to run a half marathon, I'm going to have to, expand my stride, relax my body a little bit more to save energy so I can make it that distance. So we're doing a little bit shorter distances like 10 reps versus 5-minute sets. Now, to set up for a swing properly, I'm going to have my bell in front of me like a triangle. So my feet are the base and my point is the kettlebell. I'm gonna hinge my hips backwards as if someone's pushing here. I'm gonna grab the bell. I'm gonna roll my elbows in, retract my chin. Now I'm looking a few feet in front of me. I'm gonna hike the football or hike the bell through and squeeze my glutes and finish my hips. When I'm done, backswing and down. We will go over troubleshooting things and common errors next, but that's the basics of the kettlebell swing and how you want to learn. You want to be deliberate and dynamic with the legs, squeezing the glutes, pulling the quads up, finishing the hips, and getting the bell to parallel. And again, I will talk about these things going forward. But that's how you want to do it, and that's how you want to maintain your technique. If that starts to fall apart, you have to make quick corrections or stop the set completely before you hurt your back. Now I'm going to go over some of the common mistakes I see during a kettlebell swing. The first one is very common, and that is lifting with your arms. It's very common to focus on the bell because it's in our hands to use our arms to lift the bell and not think about the legs to drive the bell. The arms basically are just a hook for the weight, and the leg drive allows for the movement of the bell. If you're using too much arm, what's going to happen is we're going to hike our bell through and we're physically lifting the bell or slowing the bell down when you're coming down. Very common. Also, the bell's coming down fast, your brain's going to go, oh no, slow it down, so I'm using my arms to slow it down. Now, you do this too much, you're lifting way more strain on the back. And then you're coming down, again, way more strain on the back because the back is bracing for those movements to help assist the slowing of the bell. When that happens, they fatigue, and then your back starts to get tired. During the swing, believe it or not, even though it's ballistic, there's not a lot of tension, only on the movements on the way up. So instead of lifting or slowing, I'm hiking, squeezing my legs. This is all relaxation the way when it comes down. So I'm relaxing my core here. I tense up a little bit when I get close to backswing, tense, and then everything relaxes within reason. I'm relaxed enough to keep the bell and maintain it here, but I'm not tense the whole time. So that's why you want to use your legs and learn to relax and not use your arms to either bring the bell up or slow it down. Lastly, if you have to use your arms, especially on the way up, the weight might be too heavy. So find a weight that's appropriate. You want a little bit of weight so you can feel it, but you don't want so much weight that you have to use your arms to lift it up. Probably the most common mistake, along with the arms, they're probably a trade-off that I see, is hinging too early in the backswing. Now we have to trick our brain, I tell people. When the weight comes up, I need to wait until my upper arms connect to my body. That way I can use my body to hinge back. The weight's going to be above my knees on the backswing. If I hinge too early, the weight's going to be down here, a lot more strain on my back. I want to be up here and closer. So you can just imagine if I'm holding a weight way out here, you can feel it. If I'm holding out here, more strain on my back. If I'm up here and holding the weight, there's a lot less strain. So all I'm doing is dropping the weight down, and I feel a little bit more strain going forward. So I'll show you the wrong way, a couple of reps so I don't hurt myself, and I'll show you waiting for the bell. So I'll show in the front. So if I were to finish my hips and then bend early, I don't have that upper arm connection, and I'm hurting my back by dropping the weight so low below my knees. Now, if I were to wait, so after I finish my rep, wait, it's way above the knees. I have that connection of the upper arm. It's much safer, much tighter to the body, and I will be able to move bigger weights because of that technique going forward. So wait a long time for that bell, keep it above the knees, and keep it safe. Next mistake I see is the lockout. So we talked about it a little bit, is we want to get the hips to drive, pull the knees up a little bit, everything underneath me stacked. So I have my ankle, my knee, my hip, and my shoulder all in a line. So a proper lockout, so focus on my hips here. I'm gonna get my setup, roll my elbows in, head back, hike through. Now, an improper lockout would be a soft lockout. That just puts way more strain on my back because I don't have everything stacked underneath me and I'm not getting enough power to swing. There's also too much lockout where I'm using my back to lock out versus my hips. So if my hips lock out, everything gets underneath me. Now if I lean back to get the weight up, I'm not using my legs. I'm not going to do too much of that, but if I lean back to get the weight up, I didn't really use my legs, and now see how my shoulders are behind my hips versus here, stacked, locked. So really learn to use your legs, bam, not bam. Also, if I do this too much, think about your disc. If I go back, I'm doing this a lot to that lower back versus stacking my vertebrae completely underneath themselves. So I'm doing like more of a shearing thing. That could be really bad for your back if you do it over a long period of time and use too much weight. So do not do that. Lock out, have someone watch you, make sure you're stacked. Also going back to the deadlifts, locking everything out, not doing this on the deadlift, getting your hips underneath you, squeezing your glutes, finishing your hips, stacking everything straight will help you out with that. Okay, the last common mistake is volume. Probably doing too much too soon. Everyone thinks there has to be a magic number, or they got to swing for a minute, or swing for 45 seconds, or swing for 15 reps. You don't have to. You can swing for 5 reps. Heck, you can swing for 1 rep and then set the bell down to get it. You want to let your form and your technique dictate how much you can do. Other things too are using too much weight. Yes, you want to use a little bit of weight because you don't want to rely on your arms. So some beginners will grab a light weight, and because it's so light, they'll use your arms a little bit more because they don't have the technique for the legs. As you get better, yes, you should be able to swing any bell, heavy or light, and use the same technique. Now, you can do things like this. I can just set up, and I want to practice. 1 explosive rep, set it down. Put it out here, practice, set it down. And then I can string 2 together. Backswing, set it down. You do not have to do sets of 10. You do not have to do sets of a minute. Work up to sets of 5, set it down. Do sets in between other exercises. Let's say you're doing rows or pull-ups and you want to do a set of 5 of kettlebell swings to work that form. That is a good way to do it. So really monitor your volume. Because it's so dynamic and we don't have, like a row, let's say we can always put the weight down. This, you've got to be fast, you got to be moving. You do too much too soon, it's much easier to hurt yourself going forward. So next I'm going to show you some kind of troubleshooting tips that'll help you have a better swing going forward. Some troubleshooting tips going forward. Again, focus on mobility and strength. I know we talked about it in the beginning, but do your deadlifts, do your goblet squats, do your core work, do your mobility, I'd say before. I even do some mobility before I go to sleep so my back feels better. Find the drills that you like. I would say focusing mostly on the hips. Upper back is good too, but the hips, if you're gonna focus on any mobility, get those hips right, mobile, loose, and that'll help out a lot. So those things work out well, building that up. Work the technique. So we just talked about earlier, not doing a lot of volume. Work your technique on that hard style, really driving from the hips, locking everything out properly, and then stopping when you feel your technique start to fall apart or just before that ideally. Next, one thing you can do, so let's say we're working up to, going a little bit longer, or we feel our technique, going as we're doing it. it is okay to swing lower and work on the hip technique. The hip technique and the hinge are the most important things. So let's say I'm doing a set and I'm in a class and I'm doing this 30-second set. So I get going and I start to get tired, but I want to keep going. It is okay if the bell is a little bit lower as long as I'm finishing my hips. Now I don't want to rely on that constantly. I do want to get it here because that's where the bell floats and is weightless. If I'm kind of here for a second, for too long, it's not really going to stop the momentum. Whereas here, I get the full kind of relaxation of the swing. So it's like a roller coaster that gets up to the peak and then it goes back down. Same thing with the swing. We get up here, it kind of floats for a second and then gets back down. And also if we want to do other things like switching swings, even snatches and stuff, you want to be able to get the bell out to parallel. Having it too low, too soon, too often is not a great thing. So when you're going up in weight, let's say, or if you're working on going longer, it is okay to go lower as long as your hips are good. Just kind of keep that in mind that your goal is parallel, but it is okay to do that so you don't hurt your low back. Lastly, just stop the sets earlier. So again, if you have a set of 10 in mind or a set of 30 and you start to feel something or you start to feel like you're losing your form, whether you're lifting with your arms, leaning back too much, not getting a proper lockout, just stop. It's okay. Live to lift another day. That's what I always say. So make sure that you just kind of sprinkle it in within your workouts. Really focus and get in tune with that technique and let your body kind of dictate how much you do with the swing. If you do these things, it should help your back out and it should help strengthen your back up. So again, thank you for watching. If you like the video, please like it down below. Also consider subscribing. We put a new video out or a podcast about every other week. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.